I got this question from a member in my community, and I thought it would be a great one for us to deep dive into a video here. So the question was actually in response to another member sharing a struggle. And the struggle was shared a small hurt with a partner that he didn't validate and got defensive. I think so many of us can relate to that experience where we finally muster up the courage, we share something that involves a lot of vulnerability for ourselves, and then the other person gets defensive with that. If you are looking for ways to navigate through that, I do have a free guide that gives you 10 sample scripts that you can shape those to your own that are going to help you respond to your partner's defensiveness. And oftentimes a large part of that is our partners get defensive because they don't quite understand what it is that you are saying, or maybe even the role that they are supposed to have in that moment. Something that can be really helpful if your partner does tend to get stuck in defensiveness is for you to be able to say some kind of preamble. So a preempt of being able to say to them, I want to share something with you, and I want you to put aside that part of you that tends to get defensive, or I want you to even know this isn't even about you, but I need to share something. It's hard for me to do this. And could you try to really just listen and understand what I'm trying to say here? So it's so difficult. And also too, what I've heard from people is they say things like, my partner is gaslighting me, my partner doesn't understand, they're narcissists, they're manipulative. We throw out all of these big terms in response to this. And instead, what I think is really important is actually to understand that oftentimes this is not a malicious response. When somebody is defensive, it usually tells me that there is a lack of skill in terms of communication. And also too, that there is, one of the first things we look for is somebody willing and able to learn and to gain insight into what's happening with you in your dynamic. And also too, sometimes people just don't realize that they're defensive, and they don't realize because I'm completely getting off topic from the question here. And I knew this would happen going into this. Let's just go with it. But what often happens here is that we just get stuck in our relationship patterns, and we don't know how it is that we are communicating, and we don't understand the way that we are impacting someone else. And the reason why we don't know is because we have seen it modeled to us. I love asking my clients, who did you see get defensive in your family? Or if there's someone who tends to be more critical and steps into that blame position, who did you see blame someone else in the family? Who did that to you? And that really gives us the chance to dig into old patterns that are repeating in our relationship. All right. So what really struck me was one of you sharing with me that something is really hard in their relationship because she said, my husband is a really good communicator because he works in sales. So he is good at manipulating things to his advantage. I don't know if he realizes he is doing it or cares enough to change. And I thought this was so important to break apart, because oftentimes what we do is someone can be really quick with their feet, and they might actually be a good communicator. They can communicate clearly. They have a posture that says, I'm confident in what I know, and they don't fumble over listing out different facts and issues that are in front of them. And while this makes them a good communicator, like somebody speaking on the stage, it doesn't mean that they have this. And this is really important when it comes to our relationships. And what I'm highlighting here is the ability to be an emotionally attuned communicator. Emotional attunement is all about what it means to sit in somebody else's experience. It is all about being curious about what someone else is saying. Emotional attunement is about sitting right beside them and not judging what's in front of you. Like, judgment sounds more like sympathy, right? Brene Brown talks about the difference between sympathy and empathy. And in her video that I absolutely loved, where the giraffe puts her head down the hole and it's like, eating a sandwich, and she's like, oh yeah, must be hard to be you. That's sympathy. When people come in with problem solving, with solutions, with defensiveness, they might be a good communicator, but they're not attuned to what's happening to you. And that attunement is around curiosity. It's around not judging your experience, but instead being able to sit beside you and say, I can only imagine what it must be like to be you. Or if you don't know what it's like to be them, then an attuned communicator can sit beside that person and start to ask questions. A communicator in this way isn't going to take things personally. Like if your partner says to you, sometimes I just don't feel important and I don't feel like you think about me. Someone who is a good communicator might be able to say, well, that's a really difficult issue. We should probably find time for us to sit down and talk about when we should make plans in our schedule so that you can feel like I'm paying attention to you. Yes, that's communication, but you're not attuning. You're not paying attention to what is actually happening beside you. And so this is such an important skill in our relationship because, of course, we know this attunement is all about deepening intimacy. It's about deepening our emotional connection with the other person. We can talk about from attachment perspectives where we feel seen, secure, safe, and soothed. Those 4 S's from Dr. Dan Siegel when it comes to building security in our relationships, we need all of those. And so when someone comes and sits beside you and you've just shared something really hard and they can say to you, wow, this is a really hard moment for you. I haven't been in this kind of experience with you, but I can imagine that would be really difficult to have this. Now, here's the thing about being that person, of being the emotional attuned communicator. It requires you to do several different things. So first, it requires you to put your own ego to the side. And in some ways, in relationships, we can all show up in a way with our child self that shows up, right? Like, think about it. We are all here just wanting attention. Yeah, I know that sounds bad. It's not though, because I want you to know that attention is actually one of our core needs. Needs are not dishes getting done. Those are desires and wants. Those are like logistical plannings. We need to do those things. But needs are about feeling autonomy, feeling loved, feeling important, feeling attention, like you're getting the attention and connection, feeling that sense of freedom, power, control. Those are needs. And yet oftentimes we don't feel that in our partnership. But so in order to really attune to somebody, you need to be first willing to put aside that ego, that part that wants to protect you, that mask, the part that gets defensive and says, oh, are they talking about me? Am I fundamentally flawed here right now? No, this is your partner having an experience. And one of the things I teach couples all the time is that practice. This is so important. The practice of being able to do self and other. So if I'm a good communicator and I'm sitting beside my partner and they say, I just don't feel like you pay attention to me, I'm going to then put aside my own stuff and imagine what it must be like to be them. And then after I empathize with them, after I let them know I see and understand that, or if I don't understand, I'm going to ask questions. That's where the skill of curiosity comes in. But then I think what's also really important in here is practicing compassion. And curiosity and compassion go hand in hand. In my book, I talk about the 4 C's that our relationships need: compassion, curiosity, collaboration, and connection. We need all 4 of those. And when we are curious first, that curiosity builds understanding, and understanding then builds compassion. And it's that compassion that we need to feel in our relationship. All right. I've gone big. I'm coming back to this piece here where if someone says they're a good communicator, I believe that. I believe that people can communicate in all forms of ways. And yet oftentimes when it comes to our romantic relationship, where we feel a deep sense of connection, where we feel intimately known, where we feel securely connected with the other person, this is about emotional attunement between partners. And the question I got in my community as well is, is this something that we can learn? Yes, it is absolutely something that we can learn, and people can build and enhance these skills over time. All right, if you found this video helpful, give me a like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.